Hey guys, so before the video starts, I just need to talk to you all about something. Recently, I've had an exponential increase in the number of emails and comments demanding to know when the next episode of Beyond Kerbol is going to be. Some going as far as to tell me to get off my ass or that I shouldn't even play other games on the channel. About half the comments on every non-KSP video now are people saying how disappointed they are that it isn't a KSP video. Now, I'm obviously really happy that you're all enjoying Beyond Kerbal as much as you are, but this has to stop. At the end of the day, this channel is a hobby for me. I don't have a Patreon, I don't take sponsorships, I never use mid-video or unskippable ads. I'm making free content for you guys just because I enjoy doing it. And so then for a vocal minority, and I know it is a minority of you, to act like I somehow owe you content on a more regular basis, content that you likely watch with adblock on anyway, is frankly ridiculous. I make videos as and when I can. I mean, I have a lot going on in my life. I'm a musician, I'm halfway through a master's degree. With regard to my non-KSP content, there are always games I'll be playing anyway as a break from KSP. I just thought that if I can hit record and still entertain a smaller number of you, then I might as well. It's extra content, you know. If I stopped producing this content, it wouldn't make the KSP stuff come out any faster. I can record, edit, and schedule 10 episodes or something like XCOM in an afternoon, whereas these Beyond Kerbal episodes, they take multiple days to make. I know some of you are going to tell me just ignore these comments, and I have been deleting them as they're posted, but in reality, I'm quite a shy, sensitive guy. I mean, YouTube is an escape from a lot of the problems I have to face in my daily life, something I've always done just because I love it, and I've always had these kind of comments that they were nowhere near as vicious and common as they are now, and it's seriously affecting my desire to make new content. I'm sorry, but if it keeps up at the rate it has been, I'm just going to end up taking a break from YouTube, possibly stopping entirely. I don't mind at all if you're only subscribed for my KSP content. By all means, only watch the stuff that interests you. But if I keep getting attacked for just playing games I enjoy and trying new things, I'm just going to stop making videos completely. Anyway, sorry to unload on you guys, but this really needed saying. Hope you take those words to heart, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello Penguinauts, I'm the Beardy Penguin and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program Beyond Kerbal. In the previous episode we went interstellar with the IEV Arthur C. Clarke, and now we are performing our final braking burn before arriving at our new name of Fust. All the, well, awake Kerbals on board, the ones that aren't cryonically frozen, certainly chanting Fust or Bust. You guys seem to be rather keen on that in the comments as well. It has got a rather nice ring to it. Slight problem is, though, that this engine, with its ridiculously high thrust and efficiency, and with burns taking place over multiple hours, even days, yeah, it's completely broken the maneuver node system, so I'm doing this completely in the dark, mostly by eye, and just sort of judging roughly when to start my burns. With burns taking place over this much time, it's pretty messy at best to assume all of your delta V is expended at one point like maneuver nodes do, and it really makes them very inaccurate even when they do work. You see they're just adjusting our trajectory using our actual monopropellant thrusters. Well, not monopropellant actually. Most of the engines on the Clarke are Werner engines that use liquid fuel and oxidizer, the largest ones I had access to, because turning this thing, it's no easy feat, I assure you that much, but by firing those for about a minute or so, we were actually able to translate enough to correct our velocity, because the Daedalus engine, it's not all that good for precise maneuvering. Anyway, we have entered the sphere of influence of Fust, and look at it there. I was about to say, isn't it beautiful? It's more of a wet mud ball, to be honest. It's actually kind of akin to Ilus from The Expanse. I don't know, it does sort of remind me of that. It's mostly covered by oceans, so sort of akin to Lathe in that aspect. It's a little bit smaller than Kerbin, and it's got 0.77 Gs of surface gravity and about 0.7 atmospheres of pressure, but the oxygen percentage of the atmosphere is much higher. I remember when I said that before, I had a bunch of people shout, high oxygen percentage, that's going to kill your Kerbals, Beardy. But actually, it turns out that the absolute pressure of oxygen on the planet is very, very similar to that of Kerbin and Solitude, because the actual overall pressure of the atmosphere is lower. you can have a larger percentage of your atmosphere be oxygen just at a lower pressure and not have it cause any complications. Back in the Apollo days, they used to have 100% oxygen atmospheres at 20% pressure because it would actually, save them a bit of structure with their spacecraft. Of course, they didn't do that on the ground. They had nitrogen on the ground because, as Apollo 1 showed, having 100% oxygen at full atmospheric pressure is a very, very bad idea. It tends to make things very flammable, very explosive even. But once they were up into orbit, they siphoned off the nitrogen and they just operated with 100% oxygen at 20% pressure, which is something I didn't actually know until I looked into it. But yeah, really rather interesting. Anyway, we have finally got ourselves into a rather skew-if orbit. I did a bit of an Elite Dangerous there and overshot the the target a little bit, but we managed to get ourselves into an orbit without shooting out of the sphere of influence again. So we are now heading down towards Fust, and we get a rather beautiful view of the little brown mud ball that it is. As non-aesthetically pleasing as it may well be, it is a perfect home for our Kerbol's oxygen atmosphere, bountiful water, and really a rather comfortable gravity. Really, 0.77 Gs is remarkably close to what they're used to on Solitude, which has 0.8 Gs. So they've all grown up with 0.8 Gs, so 0.77 Gs is going to be very, very comfy for them indeed. So now we're just performing our final circularization burn, which again was a little bit messy because the burn's taking place over a fair few minutes there. But I thought, that's close enough to a circular polar orbit. We're now going to cut the engine and perform an orbital survey, scanning for resources to check that it does indeed have all the necessary minerals and metals for us to actually construct a self-sufficient colony. After ensuring that yes, indeed it does, it's time to send the IEV James Corey down to the surface. A rather beautiful shot there of it leaving the Clark. Aboard, we've got 18 Kerbols. We've got the 3 badass Kerbols. We've got Katrina Kerman, Peter Kerman, and Ben Kerman. Ted, of course, he's staying back up on the spacecraft. That's always his job, is stay in command of the main spaceship. Katrina, she's our daring maverick pilot. She, of course, has to be the one to pilot the Condor down to the surface of an alien world. The other 15 members of the crew are actually all of our engineers, and these are actually all of the Kerbals we're going to need to get the colony, at least the initial colony, up and operational and start building colony modules for the colonists themselves to be unfrozen and head down to the surface. You see here, there really is not much land on this planet. It turns out, from the map view, it looks like there's a lot more land than there actually is. It took a few attempts. I actually descended to the surface a few times where it looked like there was an island, and it ended up just being never-ending ocean. So I took a few attempts before I found an actual landing site. You see here, just very carefully touching down. It took me a little while to find a piece of terrain that was flat enough to land the Condor on, because it is a rather heavy beast since it's got those massive fusion drives, so we need to find some flat enough ground to make sure it doesn't topple over. But there we go! We have landed on an alien world, and of course Katrina has to be the first to step out and plant a flag. The ground isn't actually covered in grass. It's sort of a form of very simple lichen, which is just barely covering the rocky surface of the planet. Of course, placing a flag, a brave new world for Kerbalkind. You will notice, however, keeping her helmet on. Because this is an alien biosphere and we do not want to be taking any chances. We are not, of course, actually going to be building a colony there. It's obviously quite a historic site because that's where we first landed, but now we're going to head for a slightly better piece of terrain for the colony. Not only do we want to be closer to the ocean, have ready access to water, but we also need some much flatter terrain to be landing all of our colony modules on. Landing it up in the mountains, not that great. Most of the terrain on this planet is indeed rather mountainous. And yeah, as I said, most of it is covered in water, but the actual biosphere of this planet is really not very advanced. We've got some basic plant life, so as I said, the rocky surface is covered in a thin layer of lichen, which just sort of uses basic photosynthesis in order to generate food for itself. And then we've got a sort of airborne form of plankton, which is what's giving the atmosphere its rather distinctive greeny brown hue, which is really quite interesting. One of the key reasons we're keeping the space helmets on, I recently watched Alien Covenant, and after seeing what happens to them in that film, yeah, I certainly wasn't going to take any chances. All the events of that film could have been avoided if they just worn some spacesuits, like anyone with common sense. So yeah, until we get our science teams down here and we've evaluated that nothing in this biosphere presents any kind of threat to our Kerbals, those helmets are staying on. It's going to be decontamination showers for everyone. But considering how young this biosphere is, it's probably only a few million years old. Well, at least it's only been a few million years since complex life has evolved. I don't really see it posing much of a threat to us. It's interesting, though, just how similar it is to our Kerbals. It's still carbon-based life, so it sort of makes you think maybe that is just the way that life always tends to evolve. It's sort of ecological pressure sort of pushes it in that sort of direction. It's interesting, the sort of field of xenobiology. You can see there we just activated our atmospheric scoops, so the Condor is now going to start refueling itself on the surface, and we can begin sending down our colony modules. This is the colony command center. It has the main reactor, and it has all the various things we'll need in order to start constructing other modules on the surface. Apart from the actual raw materials themselves, we're going to have to send those down in a separate shipment because that weighs a lot. So this just has all of the basic life support and enough stuff to sort of keep our team of engineers working until we can get some habitation modules constructed. So performing our burn, activating our inflated heat shield there, and yeah, I probably should have stuck 4 grid fins on this. You'll notice we actually started having some problems keeping your stability here, because we only had 2 of those grid fins, but it actually ends up working in our advantage, because you see it starts skewing to the left, but it turns out we actually needed to fly a little bit that way anyway, and it is aerodynamically stable, so we don't end up tumbling end over end. And yeah, it took a couple of attempts, but we managed to get really pretty close to this. Although after this landing attempt, I finally bit the bullet and got the trajectories mod, which is very, very helpful. It actually calculates where you're going to land based upon the aerodynamics of the vehicle and the density of the atmosphere you're going through. Because I can do it on airless bodies, but trying to figure out where you're going to land, plot your trajectory respectively for an atmospheric body is still a little beyond me. See there, we just about managed to activate the engines and stabilize ourselves before we hit the ground. We do run out of fuel, but thankfully the drop wasn't too far. Now we did land about 2 kilometers away, so I'm sure it took all our 18 of our Kerbals a fair little while to to haul this module down the hill a little bit and get it into a slightly flatter piece of terrain closer to the Condor. And now we've got it there, we're just going to get Don Kerman to go out and just remove all the different pieces and different parts that we needed to actually land it on the surface, because now we don't need them. We're just trying to keep the part count as low as possible and try and keep my frames per second in the double digits. See there, just activating the main reactor, which runs off of helium-3 and deuterium, and extending our inflatable storage modules. And now we've done that, we can just connect up our fuel transfer station to the Condor, although it is actually refueling itself, but that does just easily allow us to transfer all of our engineers into the module, because the modules that the base is actually made of boost their productivity so that they build modules a little bit faster on the surface of another world. As I said, 15 engineers, well, 16 engineers if you count our badass engineer Ben Kerman, who's actually in charge of the base. He previously commanded Artemis, so he knows what he's doing. So now all they need is the actual raw materials to build our first module. We've got a massive industrial module which will essentially refine and assemble all the different things that they'll need. And then using that industrial module, we can then start producing material kits and specialized parts to build further modules from the raw resources that those little resource pods you can see there just behind the second Condor are going to be extracting once we get those down to the surface. So this is a really, really heavy spacecraft. I think this is about 180 tons or so of supplies. So it took quite a long time, quite a trajectory that goes really quite shallow through the atmosphere for the majority of its trip. So I did cut out most of this atmospheric entry process, but yeah, I tried to take a slightly steeper trajectory to make the landing more accurate, and ended up smashing into the ground because it just couldn't slow down, couldn't lose enough momentum quick enough. So yeah, as I said, I bit the bullet, got the trajectories mod. You guys have been telling me to get it for ages, and it is great, to be fair. And yeah, just look how accurate our landing is here. Look at that, wow. It really is a very, very good mod. It just shows you where you're going to land based on the aerodynamics of your vehicle. So yeah, not surprised you've been recommending it to you. I guess, you know, I wanted to have the pride of playing without it, but it took I tried so many times to get it close, and in the end, nope, screw it, just going to get trajectories. I don't think anyone's going to mind. You see there, we land really rather close. So we just roll it over, end over end, until we get it closer to the colony, and then using USI's logistics system, we can transfer all of the resources on board. And then what we can do is actually take the whole thing apart. because we can break it down into its constituent material kits and specialized parts, and then repurpose those in order to build modules. So Don Free out again, just going and disassembling all the various different parts, even the rocket nozzles and all the monopropellant thrusters, fuel tanks, everything. I had a little bit of trouble getting this landing leg, but after jumping about a bit, we managed to get it and take the entire thing apart and store all of those different parts in those two inflatable modules on the side there. So now we've done that, what we can do is grab ourselves a survey stake and a mallet, and then we're just going to march over to the other side of the colony and whack a survey stake into the ground, which is essentially just telling the colony where I want to be building this first module. And then, well, we can use all of those parts that that little supply vessel brought down, and we can begin assembling our colony, which is really quite exciting. We only had to bring down 2 big things, and we can just get building, which is really quite cool. It saves us having to struggle with landing massive, great big modules on the surface of an atmospheric world, which is really quite difficult. And it requires really a lot of planning. We would have had to send all the different pieces down in in a number of smaller vehicles instead of just all in one go. But while we're assembling that, I decided, you know what, yeah, let's start landing some of these resource pods. You can see they're using a really quite cool little sky crane engine. Unfortunately, the actual flame effects don't seem to work in a vacuum, but once we enter the atmosphere, they work just fine, so I don't know what on earth's going on with that. But this first one actually is going to be mining ore, which on second thought we don't really need, because we can get water directly in order to split it, electrolyze it into hydrogen and oxygen and produce liquid fuel and oxidizer. But I don't know, just in case we didn't have an easy access to liquid water, I just packed an ore mining pod on here as well. You see there, just retract the sky crane and then just bulk up the springs in the landing legs so we get a good amount of clearance on the drills, and we get drilling. And the great thing about USI's logistics system is that we can just start dumping all of those resources into a planetary stockpile, which, using the logistics module on the main base, we can actually just take resources out of it, so long as we have a Kerbal, well, a pilot or a quartermaster on board at any point. So that means we can leave these resource pods well outside load range and keep the lag around our base to an absolute minimum. The second one here is mining for metallic ore. You see, we did topple over, so it took a little bit of rolling about to actually get it topside again. Metallic ore we can refine into metals, which we can then use to construct material kits. You see, I'm sort of finagling about trying to just extend and retract the sky crane, firing the engines, and oh, nope, tumbling over again. And then finally, after rolling about and letting rip some explosives, we finally managed to get the landing legs extended and get drilling, dumping metallic ore into the planetary stockpile as well. So we're just going to start blasting through these pretty much. Next module up is minerals, which we can refine into chemicals. Chemicals are actually used in quite a few of our production chains. Not only are they used in the construction of material kits, they're also used in the construction of specialized parts. So we need lots and lots of these. And you can also turn minerals into fertilizer. So yeah, we need a lot of them. Thankfully, we've got these drills are going to be mining way more of each different resource than we actually need. See, they're significantly condensed from the old mining modules that we used back on Nemesis for Artemis, because I actually know how much of each resource I need now for a self-sufficient base. That one there mined exotic minerals, which we use for refined exotics, which we then turn into specialized parts. And this next one is going to be mining silicates, which we of course refine into silicon, which is another ingredient for making specialized parts. Yeah, there are some rather long and complicated production chains in USI, and honestly, if you want a tutorial to do with USI, I can't recommend Mark Thrimm's tutorial series enough. I mean, it was an absolute godsend for me for figuring all this stuff out, so a little shout out to him. His tutorial series on USI is incredible, so I will link it in the description below. This next one here is for substrate, which we refine into polymers, an ingredient in material kits. We also use it for actually farming, so it's the thing that we actually have our plants in, let them grow in, and all of our actual greenhouse modules, which we will be building a little bit later in the episode. The penultimate one is going to be mining rare metals, which is another ingredient for those refined exotics that we used for specialized parts. See here, we're actually landing in the middle of a storm, which is quite interesting. The shadows cast by those clouds I thought was really quite striking. I didn't realize that clouds actually cast shadows, but yeah, apparently they do, which is it's really quite cool. See there, another little tumble, but I managed to write the mining pod a little faster this time. And then last but not least, we have our water mining module. This one had to be a little bit more accurate with the actual landing site, because of course we have to actually land it near a body of water for it to mine, well, I guess create a borehole for us to extract water. It doesn't exactly mine water directly, and of course that will be used as drinking water after it's been sufficiently filtered, well, extensively filtered, to be fair. You can't take any chances when you're in a completely foreign biosphere. But after all that, our module has now finished building, and there it is, the industrial module, handling all of our refining and assembly. Yeah, you can see why I didn't want to land that thing. It's it's huge and very, very heavy. So you've got a few different inflatable modules there, storage modules mainly, for all our various resources. And now we've got it fully operational. We can also put all of our engineers inside all the various different modules, which will boost their productivity and mean that future modules will be produced even faster. And just see there, Kerbalkind just getting rid of that survey stake. Now we've built this module. So now we can actually activate all of our production chains after we've filled all the various parts with machinery. So of course, as I said, we're going to be refining all the different things and then combining them in the assembly plant into material kits and specialized parts, and then we can also combine those material kits and specialized parts into machinery, which is used in all of our production chains. We haven't, however, got a supply of organics yet, which is a crucial third ingredient, as well as those material kits and specialized parts, in making colony supplies, which we will use to freeze the habitimers of all of our Kerbals so that they don't get homesick too badly. It just basically provides all of the living things that they need, all the amenities they need to actually stay happy on another planet. And if we use them for long enough, the planet will actually be considered colonized, which means we won't even have to produce colony supplies anymore for them to stay here permanently, which is really rather awesome. So that's what we're going to do next. Now we're actually producing material kits and specialized parts from the resources we're mining on this planet, because of course we couldn't possibly ship enough material kits and specialized parts all the way from Solitude to construct a colony to support 60 Kerbals. We're going to have to do some in situ resource utilization. So thankfully we practiced this quite extensively back on Artemis, so we know what we're doing. Planting 3 more survey stakes in the ground, and we're going to start producing habitation pods. Now each of these habitation pods can support 6 Kerbals. So of course we have 18 in the main colony command center, so we're going to have 3 attached onto this. But the other ones, using USI's local logistics, don't even have to be attached to the main base, which is really rather cool. And the colonists themselves, the ones that aren't actually involved in running the base, are going to be in each of those separate little pods, living in little groups of 6, which I think is really rather adorable. And you see there, this is the point where we run out of specialized parts from that we actually ship down to the surface from Clark, so we're going to have to start producing them, which takes a little while, so I thought I might as well get this first habitation pod working. The main module that's built around is a colonization module, which, as I said, it consumes those colony supplies and it freezes the habitimers of 6 Kerbals on board. We also have recyclers to reduce the strain on our life support systems, and an agroponics bay to produce enough supplies for those 6 Kerbals. We also have that little greenhouse module off to the side, which is going to be producing organics, and once we've got 3 of these set up, we should have more than enough organics to be actually building enough colony supplies to then freeze the habitimers of the Kerbals. So yeah, each one produces enough organics to then supply the main base to be combined with material kits and specialized parts, which can then be used in the colony supplies to then freeze the timers of said Kerbals. It's a little bit complicated. Hopefully I made some sense there. But anyway, now we're going to connect up that final one, and it's going to be a little while yet before we have enough material kits and specialized parts. I've said those 2 terms way too many times in this video. It's going to take a while before we have enough of those to actually build that 3rd habitation pod. So in the meantime, we're probably just going to well, fast forward a little bit of time in the next episode, and then we can actually start churning them out, and we can start bringing down colonists from the Clark. But that will be in the next episode. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do hope you've enjoyed. I've been the Beardy Penguin, and I will see you all next time.